Hey everybody, I'm Tammy Kiefer. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
And my name is Desiree Grimaldi. Welcome to Unguarded Minds podcast, where we talk about all the drama, trauma, and gritty things that life throws at you. Today we have a special guest with Duna. She's an integrative nutrition health coach who specializes in emotional eating. In a very bad moment in her life, after years of struggling with her relationships with food and her body and engaging in emotional eating, it became clear that she needed to do something about it. After much inner work and finding her purpose, she made it her mission to help other women transform their emotional eating habits into mindful nourishment, breaking free from food guilt and body shame so that she can focus on what's important, like her passions and dreams. So, welcome, Duna. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. So, what we like to discuss and how we think that you can kind of help our audience is starting at the beginning of what cause the emotional eating or the toxic relationship with food or things like that, because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So if you could kind of bring us back and start us at the beginning.
hmm Well, the beginning was when I was a child, although I was not aware of it until just a few years back. Because my whole life, what happened is that I felt at war with food and with my body. I always felt pulled towards the bad foods, and I thought I was the problem, that I was not able to follow diets while other people were. So obviously, I thought, well, if other people are able to follow diets and I'm not, I am the problem. So, and I never realized that this was emotional eating. And it was when my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he told me that he was happy with the life he had had. I was like, oh my God, I want to be able to say the same thing when the time comes. And I realized that the way I related to food in my body was holding me back, because if you have constant food thoughts, if you're constantly doubting about what you're eating, the consequences it's going to have in your body, it occupies so much time and energy that I was like, this, if I keep going this way, I'm going to look back when I'm 80 and I'm going to be thinking, oh yeah, I struggled with food a lot. So, then I started looking on the internet, and I came across the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I started my coaching journey. And I didn't do it for the coaching. I did it for the food, because I wanted to learn more about it. And because they talk about food inside and outside the plate. So you might be eating very clean, but if your relationships are toxic, then you're not going to be healthy and happy. And that resonated with me a lot. However, doing this coaching program, I started addressing my relationship with food, but it's only when I was able to be with my dad during his last month of life that there I saw that I was eating my emotions, because it was a very, very hard time. And I was just going to the pantry. It was very difficult. And then is when I was like, oh, wait a second. It's it's not only my relationship with food, I am using it to feel better, to give me comfort. And here, a whole other journey started, where I had to, okay, if I am doing this, this is not something that's happened since yesterday. This comes from a while back. And I could see that I actually never learned to feel my emotions. And I've seen that most of us haven't. And it's because we tend to um, classify emotions the same way we classify food as good or bad. We do the same things with emotions, negative and positive. And I grew up learning to mask negative emotions. I don't call them negative, I call them unpleasant. But I learned to not show those, to just shove them down, and I used food to make me to cope in those difficult moments. Um, and then that's when, once I was aware of what was really the problem, the root cause of why I felt this way with food, then it's when I was able to um, look at my beliefs, and then challenging them, changing, reframing, and learning to be in tune with my body, with my emotions, and developing coping skills.
So it's hard to miss your beautiful accent. Were you, and I have a point for asking this, but were you raised in the US or were you raised in a different country?
In a different country.
So, because I know that that's a big thing right now too. I mean, lots to do with the emotional part of it, but even the type of food difference, like what you were able to maybe indulge in another country, is so hard to do here because there's so many additional chemicals and other things in
Hmm.
the way that it treats your body and things like that. So I think that's interesting. Even like, so even if you didn't have an emotional, it would be a huge adjustment in eating habits alone, just based on what's allowed and what's not in the food
Hmm.
from country
Yeah.
to country.
Yes, that's right. And now that you mentioned this, it's funny because the food I would turn to, it was like cookies and chips, but because I didn't have much uh, fast food restaurants around, we had two or three, not no more. So, and here in the States, there's a lot of that. And I think that if I had grown up here, maybe I would have gone to those places a lot more than I actually went, because where I grew up, we didn't have access to it. It's very
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Portugal in a little town until I was 12, and then we moved to Andorra, which is a small country between France and Spain. So always from a small place to a little larger, but still small. Yeah, so we didn't have. It's not that fast food didn't exist, but there was just the ones we all know. But here, when I came here to the States, actually, I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that there were that many food restaurant chains, fast food. I had no idea.
Right.
But even the fast food is so different. I see like all the TikToks of people at like McDonald's in a different
Mhm.
country and it's like
Uh-huh.
gourmet. That is not the garbage
Yes.
you grow.
Well, so then growing up when you were younger, was in your family, was body image an issue? How did you guys handle emotions? Like how did you grow up as far as uh body shame, image?
Mhm.
Was that a factor back then?
In my house, like my mom and my dad, they were never worried about that. My sister did worry about that a lot, and even at some point, I remember my parents being a bit worried about her eating habits. To me, it was more the acceptance at school. I have a vague memory, and sometimes I'm like, is this a real memory or not? Where I was in elementary school, and my friends calling me whale. um, and that is a memory I have. And what happened then is when I was around 14, I went shopping with my friends and I could not find pants, and that was really, really, really hard. And I've never been obese. I've never overweight, yes, but I really, when I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh my goodness, you saw yourself so much bigger than this, and I was, yes, a little overweight, but I've never been obese, and still I didn't find pants, and I was very, very hard. And that's where I started dieting for the first time. And the problem is that with the diet, I was under eating, and if you're undereat, you're gonna end up binging, or overeating, and because you need to compensate. um and that's, I think that uh that also started my unhealthy relationship with food, because then, okay, if I don't find pants, there's something
Mhm.
wrong with me, because I'm going to all the shops and there's no way I can find pants. So I am the problem. So I need to modify my body. Um, and then I was not able to stick to a diet. It was too difficult for me. And then all the guilt and shame, because I don't have willpower, I don't have discipline, and all, the mental and emotional health gets in the way. And when it comes to emotions, I grew up in a house where we didn't talk about unpleasant emotions. I grew up in a house with a lot of drama. So something would happen, and the next day, or even the same day or the next day, no one ever came to me and talked about the event that happened, how I felt, how, nothing. Something happened, and then everyone acted as nothing had happened. So as a kid, you think, okay, so this, that I feel this as a very big emotional moment. I feel scared. I feel so many things, but no one is paying attention to me. So I guess it's not valid. So I'm just going to shove it down because I shouldn't be feeling this. I'm just going to eat and let it go.
Is your sister older or younger?
Older.
She's older. Okay. And then, so when you would have these drama things going on in your home, did you and your sister talk, or did you talk to any of your friends, or did anyone, just no one talked?
No one talked. And I took the role of the meditator at home, the mediator, sorry, mediator.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happened, I would try to calm things down and keep peace and all that. And none of my friends ever knew what was happening in my house. No one ever knew. Which
And
now I
was
think back and I'm like, oh, I remember I have in college a group of friends that they just ghosted me. And when I think back, I'm like, well, I was not the best company. That's right. But they had no idea what was going on. So I understand them in the fact that this girl is very explosive. Suddenly she's happy and suddenly she's so overwhelmed and frustrated that she says anything, out of context. I understand that from their point of view. It's like, this girl is a little unstable, but there was a reason that I was that way, but I never shared it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so did it affect your relationships? Like, I guess you're talking about friendships and things like that, but just the body shame and just keeping all this stuff internally, and did it start to affect relationships?
Yes, I always felt very ashamed of my body, and even like I had my first boyfriend, and things, to be honest, went very well, but it did take a lot of time for me to feel comfortable with him, even to do the first things and everything. It took time to be able to feel comfortable and yeah, to let him to let me uh be naked and accept that, oh, he's seeing my body as it is, because it was difficult for me.
It's
And
still difficult for a lot of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it has happened in other relationships. I've had a couple of relationships where they body shamed me, and or things like, oh, I have this friend and his girlfriend is going to the gym. It's so nice that she's doing that for him. So there's a message behind, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things like this. So and the messaging we receive from society is that you need to be thin to be healthy, you need to have a certain body type and all that, and that got stuck in my head for a long time. And it's just a few years back where uh, I started embracing that uh, bodies come in all shapes and sizes. And a lot of times someone might be very skinny, but they are not healthy and they wish they had your body,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people that you might judge thinking that they are unhealthy, and they go to the doctor and all their numbers are okay. So we need to really,
Literally the conversation we have in our house all the time, because my
yeah.
husband is 120-ish pounds heavier than I am. And he's way healthier than me. But we go to the doctor and our blood work is identical
Hmm.
because we eat the same thing. So it's going to be identical. But I mean, it's identical. But he is like, my kids, they banter back and forth and stuff about his weight. And I'm like, he is healthier than all of us. He could outrun us. He has more stamina than we do. He could
Exactly.
lift more than we can.
Exactly.
You
That's
know, and
beautiful.
I'm like, it doesn't matter. You could be heavier and still be healthier,
Yes.
because I grew up, my mother was anorexic. So I had
Mm,
terrible eating habits because
of
she
course.
wouldn't eat. So then I'd forget to eat, or like, so
Hmm.
there's different ways to have unhealthy eating habits, and it isn't just reflected within being heavy.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times we undereat, thinking that that's going to help us lose weight and feel in control, and it does the exact opposite. Because when you restrict, then you create that tension, that restriction leads to deprivation, and your body it's not going to start losing weight. It's going to be like, wait a second, are we starving? Let me slow down the metabolism, because I don't know when I'm going to have all the food again. So diets really, and was a big thing for me a few years back. Diets don't work. And I was like, what do you mean diets don't work? If they worked, there wouldn't be all the different diets that are out there, because they would work. And what is someone's so what works for one person can be someone else's poison. And that is very important for us to understand, that there's no one diet that fits all. And I still eat cookies. Does that mean I'm unhealthy? No, but I've learned to eat them when I want them, not to cope. And I eat a variety of other foods. It's really finding the diet that works for you, your own diet, your personal own diet.
And I think, food and dieting and just the idea around, like you said, your relationship with food, there's so much more beyond that, as far as just having a sense of control over your life. And when you don't have control over your life, like maybe when you were growing up, maybe you felt like that there's all this drama going on in the family, and then your role was to be the person that's like, okay, everything's got to be okay. Are you okay? Are you okay? Everything, the mediator, and that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for a kid, especially because you don't have control over what your parents are doing, or what your sister is doing, or what your friends are doing. And food tends to be something that you have absolute control over. And you don't have to, it can become very a secretive mission that you're on, because it's like, this is my thing. I'm not going to eat, or I'm going to eat everything that I can in secret, or I'm going to hide food, or I'm going to eat and throw up, or I'm going to, it just becomes a control factor. And so a lot of times, maybe you're seeing that also with the work that you're doing, is it's not so much about focusing on food, but like you're saying, it's about like figuring out a different relationship, and where do I feel so out of control, and what can I do to manage that internal struggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And actually, you said it, emotional eating is not about the food, really. Emotional eating is about your ability to feel and manage your emotions. And I believe that probably maybe the next generations will have more, they will learn more from their parents. But our parents didn't learn themselves. So it was very difficult for them to teach us something they didn't learn themselves, because their parents lived in another, in a society that was different, and where beliefs around emotions were different. So I think that all the generations up till now, we need to heal that relationship with emotions, because all the generations behind us, they didn't have the tools. They had a lot of limiting beliefs around them. But now people are starting to learn more about emotions and the importance of emotions. I mean, we are emotional beings, and emotions are here to give us messages. If I feel angry, that's nothing bad. It's my internal state. It's giving me information. There's a boundary that was that someone passed, and now I feel angry. So it's information to look at what happened and reflect on how you can act with that. So all emotions are here to give us a message, and when we just shove them down, not only we're not listening to the message, but then we cope in an unhealthy way, be it with food, alcohol, or shopping, or drugs, or it can be with many things. Emotional eating is with food, but really not with being able to cope. A lot of people might turn to other things.
Yeah. It's all about those coping mechanisms. So how did it how did it affect you growing up? Did you kind of pull away from people? Did you shut down? You mentioned the bullying in elementary school, and it's those
Mhm.
things that you just never forget. You can forget so many
Mhm.
positive things that people told you when you were little, but one or two things or 15, whatever, those are the things that just get burned into your mind.
Mhm.
Like, how'd you handle that?
Um, I the idea I have, like my aunts would say, "Oh, I always saw you very sad, and now I understand why." And on the contrary, I thought that I was always putting on a smile. I've always tried to, putting the smile and just be the happy person. I was not really able um, to accept all my past and heal my past until my dad got sick, and then I went to therapy because it was so difficult, and my relationship with my dad was not ideal. And I was living with him because I had had an accident that brought me from Laos to Switzerland, and then COVID happened, and then my dad was diagnosed. So it was a lot of different emotions, and a very emotional moment, difficult. So in therapy I was able um to look at my past, and what I say, it's look at the past, heal your past, to live in the present and make a better future. Because if you look at your past and try to understand things without judgment. So I haven't talked with my mom in 9 years because she was the one with the drama and all that. And she made our life very, very difficult. So to the point that we had to say, you know what, we can't keep having a relationship because things are not going well. So it was a very difficult decision, and it's a difficult decision that haunted me for years because I did feel guilty, and society doesn't really accept that you don't talk to your mom because she's your mom, so you have to have a relationship with her. So it was very difficult. And when my dad was diagnosed and I went to therapy, I could also heal that, um, because at the end of the day, I was hurting myself by interpreting all that as, look at what happened to me, poor little me. No, that happened. That's a fact. And now to empower yourself to learn from all that. And that's something that now I try to do a lot. And it's um, really look at situations from a compassionate point of view. Bringing compassion, I think this is a very important thing, and I try to do that a lot with my clients because we are so easy at judging everything, ourselves, and then everything and the situations that happen to us. So by bringing compassion and trying to understand a little bit better, I was really able to start feeling safe, to feel my emotions, and empower myself to uh, I am not a victim of my situations. I'm not a victim of my past. I can use my past to empower and create a better future.
I love that. Do you feel like some of those thoughts, like and experiences, and it's just such an ingrained emotion, it stays back there and it's
Mhm.
always available to jump into the front of your mind.
Yes.
So how do you manage that when the old tapes start playing again and the old
Hmm.
statements, and yeah, how do you manage that?
I've started to foster a lot of self awareness, meaning
Mhm.
being very aware of the thoughts that I have. Um, and the things I do and how I interact with the world. And then it's really a lot of thought observation. And then the self coaching model. Um, I'm going to put an example,
Okay.
a simple example. Let's say the other day my car broke down, and and at first I was so mad. I was so mad. And the first thought that came is like, when I get home, I'm going to order pizza. That was my train of thought. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. You don't need pizza. What's going on? Why are you like this? So I looked, I was like, my car broke down, and that's making me mad. The car breaking down it's not a positive or a negative. It's a fact, right? It broke down. That's if I go to a court and I say the car broke down, they're going to be yes. If I say the car broke down, that's such a bad thing. That's not, no, it broke down. I am putting the negative feelings on it. My thoughts, now my car broke down. Why did it why did this happen to me? I had such a bad day that of course this had to happen. All those thoughts are what are making the situation as bad, that bad, and that are making you feel bad, awful, negative. And what happens when you feel all those unpleasant emotions? My head was like, oh, pizza, because I love
Mm-hmm.
pizza. And then I was like, okay, no, the car broke down. That's okay. It's annoying, yes, but what's the worst case scenario? That I have to leave the car here and someone picks me up? Okay, it's okay. It's not a big deal. So it's really looking at the situation, how you are reacting to the situation, and choose to react differently. Now it sounds easy, but it's not, because when our emotions are, and it requires practice, right? And sometimes it's just, I need to be angry. Well, sometimes we do need to be angry, and that's okay. But when you're able to look at the situations and observe how you're feeling and how you are reacting to it, it's very empowering, because something that I learned and helped me a lot is to understand that we're not our thoughts. And this, I heard this the other day, our thoughts are like a burp. They come from inside of us, but they are not us.
I like
And
that.
it's true. And it's true because our mind, thoughts just come, but that doesn't mean that they are you, and it doesn't mean that they are true either. And when you understand this, it's very empowering, because then you know that you can actually change your thoughts. If I'm now I'm starting a launch in a week, so I'm preparing a lot of things, and then my head comes and says, what if no one wants to work with you? What if all this limiting? And I'm like, and what if they want to work with me? It's changing the way I'm looking at it, instead of letting all the worst case scenario, because that's what our brain does. Our brain is not here to make us happy. It's here to ensure that we survive. Our brain's main job is survival. And by looking at the worst case scenario, it's helping us prepare for it. But when we look at the worst case scenario, then we enter in spiraling thoughts that is like, oh my God, if this happens, and we get entertained in that negative thought. So by changing the way you look at something, it can really help you change the way you feel about it and how you act on it too.
Yeah.
So you have a business helping people do that, but if you could offer advice to like parents with young
Mhm.
kids on like certain things, because like when we went to a CrossFit gym, there was a nutritionist there, and she was like, don't ever discuss weight in front of your kids. And I was like, I hear you. I know what you're like. I know the intention behind it, but at the
Mhm.
same time, if you don't discuss weight with your kids, they're not going to be aware of like how quick they can gain a ton of weight, or their eating habits, or not being aware of what they're eating, those kind of things. So what would be like an ideal healthy situation for parents to do for themselves, or people to do for themselves, but also people who have children at home, especially with the internet now, and especially with body image being such a big thing, and body shaming and weight and all the diets and just all the things? Like, what would be the ideal healthy
Mhm.
situation for youth?
I
Like, see,
think that I think that it's very important to stop labeling food as good and bad, because that demonizes a lot of foods. And if I tell you from tomorrow on you will never ever be able to eat cookies again, what are you going to eat today?
Cookies.
Cookies. Right. Exactly. So the fact that there's good and bad foods makes the bad foods they put them in a pedestal. So, and when they are in a pedestal, we think about them more often. When they are up there and they are not good, you shouldn't. It's the thing, like when you tell someone, don't look there. Where do you look? You look there. Exactly. So it's this good and bad food really hurt our relationship with food. There is more nutritious and less nutritious food, 100%. Yes, and that's very important. But I would focus more on adding foods than restricting. For example, if you eat steak and fries, add a veggie instead of removing the fries. Maybe eat less fries and put more veggies. So I'm more about adding instead of restricting, and looking at food as food, instead of demonizing foods because they are sweet or all these things. So I think that if kids grow up understanding that there are foods that are more nutritious and less nutritious, and connecting to themselves, and kids are intuitive eaters. It's after that that we become non-intuitive eaters. But
If my son could live on Doritos, he would. And I like ban red dye in the house, so it is a constant
red
battle.
dye, like
And he doesn't eat a single vegetable. He refuses.
yeah. It's interesting with kids. One day I heard on a podcast saying that kids, when they are difficult with food and things like that, we need to understand that food is kind of the only thing they can control. They don't control when they go to sleep, when they wake up, when they go to school, when their life is organized by the caregivers. So they don't have much control about their lives. What they they can control is the food, if I am going to eat this or not. And that's what comes with a lot of
He's been
frustration with
controlling it
parents.
since his first breath. He was allergic to every formula, like
Oh
the
no.
day he came out.
Oh,
And he's been a picky eater ever since.
I mean, if you're allergic and all that, that's yeah. When there's allergies and all that, that's a whole other uh way
But
of
I tell
having
him
to.
all the time, but I'm like, you are a mindless eater. Like, he
Mm,
sits in front of the TV and
oh
he doesn't even look at the food. And
yeah,
he'll go through a whole bag of chips. And I'm like, but
yeah.
then he's 11, but then he will complain that he's getting heavier or he doesn't
Uh-huh.
like and I'm like, well, don't drink a gallon of milk a day. Drink a
Mm-hmm.
cup. Don't, you know, and just trying to help him identify, like, you could eat a bowl of carrots and be full, or you could eat a
Mm-hmm.
bag of chips and not be full. And,
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I question it. And Tammy,
Sure.
you have a growing boys. I mean, they go from being picky to eating out of house and home, and
Yeah.
just trying to like balance,
Mm-hmm.
like, what
Well,
should I say? What shouldn't I say? How should I approach it? I
it's
don't want to traumatize or damage this.
yeah, yeah. I am not a mom, so I don't have the experience. I can imagine that it's very difficult because, like you say, you don't want to damage their relationship with food or and all that. And it's true that when they are kids, it's easy to say something and that they take it to an extreme and then problems. But for example, if your kid wants to eat some Doritos, um, maybe he can eat a handful of Doritos and then something else that has protein, or carrot sticks, and then something else that might keep him full and that adds more nutrition. So that's why I was saying, instead of removing the Doritos, because if we remove the Doritos, then he's going to keep thinking about them, and maybe a day that he's not at home, he'll go buy them. I don't know. But if instead of removing, we add something to make it a more balanced meal, that can be a way to not feel deprived and give more nutrition to the body. And then when it comes to movement, instead of looking at movement as a punishment, which is what a lot of people do, and I did for years and years, and that's why I was not able to go to the gym, is shifting our mindset and thinking, so I want to get to the end of my life being able to move and being able to do things. What do I need to do that? Well, I need to move my body a little bit because otherwise I'm not having the mobility and all that. So I choose to move my body in ways that feel good. And sometimes that looks like going for a walk. I'm moving my body. Is that the best workout in the world? No. But it is better than staying at home and not doing anything. Right? And then sometimes I do workouts that are harder and all that because I like them. And sometimes I do yoga because I need something calm. So instead of having this rigid idea of moving your body, exercising needs to be like this, like dieting needs to be like this, it's always, I think it's really about shifting our mindset and be flexible instead of so things have to be this way.
Hmm.
Because no, we
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
flexibility.
And that all or nothing thinking is such a huge part of I mean, extremes never work. You could
Exactly.
have a little chocolate cake is good, but a whole chocolate cake, you're going to get sick. Or a little bit of work is good, but if you work all the time, you don't have work-life balance. You know, I think that extremes just never work. And when you get into that eating disordered thinking, it is all about extremes. I'm either
Hmm.
going to have this or I'm never going to have this. I'm going to work out hard or I'm not going to work out. I'm going to, and it's just such the rigid thinking is such a huge part of it,
Yeah.
that it's ingrained in that thinking. And it's, I think that it comes back down to that control, that when you
Yeah.
don't have control, you're so out of control internally that you try to control everything around you.
Hmm.
And it doesn't work
Yeah.
because you can't. So I think that
And
you're right, like that. Hmm.
yeah. And a lot of time it's automatic responses, right? It's things that we learned. And it's something that you learn and that becomes second nature. You don't think about doing it. You don't think about how do I need to brush my teeth? You just do it,
Hmm.
right? You don't think every day, what do I need to do to have a shower? And reflect about it. You just do it because you learned. And when, as emotional leader, your automatic response is to
Right.
go there. And what happens is what you were saying, the all or nothing mentality. I ate 2 cookies. I already ate them. So just let's keep
I might
going.
as well just have the whole
E-
bag. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And sometimes, and this happened to me, first it was the weekends. I'm good Monday to Friday, but I'm bad during the weekends. But it was such the weekend started being Saturday and Sunday. Then it started being Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then it started being Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because to me, I was so in such a bad moment that I needed the comfort and I could not wait until the weekend.
Hmm.
Now, I don't, I mean, I eat the same way weekends and weekdays because I don't restrict myself, because I connect with my body to understand what I need and to feel my emotions. And if I'm upset, I'm going to look, calm, stay calm and okay, I'm upset. What do I need? And then I might go for a walk or talk with a friend or different things instead of going to food. Sometimes it might still be going to food because food is connection, food is joy, and going to food every now and then, there's nothing wrong with that. But if food is our primary coping mechanism and then it's followed by guilt and shame, that's when it becomes a problem. So, and it's very important to interrupt that automatic response. Um, uh, that's one of the steps with the self-awareness I was mentioning before. It's really being aware of what we do, understand why we do the things we do the way that we do them.
Yeah.
So, who's your ideal client that you work with? Is it typically women? Is it men and women?
No, it's typically women, just because I feel more connected with them because I'm a woman. But I always like to highlight that men also have these problems. When it comes to emotions, men have had a lot of messaging about not crying, about being strong. So I do believe that a lot of men have these struggles too. But I do work more with women over 30, and it's really women that they are just they can't handle emotions, difficult emotions, without thinking about food, and they feel pull towards food, and their time and energy it's dedicated to this, and they just want time and energy to focus on what's important to them. They want to handle emotions in a healthy way. So yeah, that's more or less my ideal client. It's really women that struggle with their emotions.
Awesome. And so you have your website, you have Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. We're going to link all those stuff.
That's it. And that's a lot for me.
I have a quick question. So if you find someone to your ideal client and say they come to you, how does that look? Do you put together, do you focus more on the nutrition? Do you put together like a nutrition plan? Are you doing counseling? Are you doing like helping them identify the emotions? Like what does that look like when women come to you for help?
So I don't do meal plans because one of the pillars of my program is really reconnecting to yourself. And I don't know how your body reacts to different things. I don't know your tastes. I don't know. I'm going to help you add instead of restrict, but I'm not going to create a meal plan for you.
Okay.
What we do is, at first we do more beliefs and emotions and feeling emotions and coping. And then we go to food, because food is actually a result of how we relate to emotions. So first we focus on emotions and all this emotional world. The food, little by little, is going to get balanced. And then we'll look into that and how we can make a more balanced meal and things like this. But just by working on emotions, beliefs, and all that, food will find its balance too. So first emotions and then more food.
Got it. Great. Good. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. You've brought a lot of insight and different ways of thinking and encouragement and empowerment and awareness, and it's been super beneficial.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
We'll be sure to link everything below in the description so everybody knows how to find you and connect with you. And then you sent us an additional link, and emotional eating. Is that how they would sign up, or?
Oh, yes, that's to download my ultimate guide to end emotional eating. Yes.
Is that a
great.
free guide? Awesome.
Yeah,
So
that's
we'll
a
be sure to
free
link
resource
that.
that I'm offering.
Awesome. We will be sure to link that too.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.